All right. For the last couple of months, we've been looking at what it means to be sold out for Jesus and sold out for God. And today is the last Sunday that we're going to be looking at this. And so I want to do a little bit of a recap and relook at what it means for this. Next Sunday, we're starting a new series looking at the parables of Jesus. And I'm actually looking forward to that, because so often when we read parables and read the stories that Jesus say, we really miss the punchline. And when we get that punchline, it's like, wow, I didn't expect that. So I'm looking forward to that. But let's look at this topic of what it means to be sold out for God. Let me remind you what the first commandment is. That there will be no other gods, only me. No carved gods of any size, shape or form anywhere or anything, whatever. Whether are things that can fly or walk or swim, don't bow down to them and don't serve them, because I am God, your God, and I'm a most jealous God. And it's interesting that Rod brought in some of this during communion. Rod and I hadn't spoken, but this is obviously a message that God's wanting to get through to us. And even in that last line of the chorus of the hymn we sang, which Bruno picked in I Survey a Wondrous Cross, about us giving our life and all for him. God is a jealous God. Absolutely right. And sometimes we forget that. And we put it down there, that's not right. The very, very first thing that is said. No other gods, only me. So if we're completely surrendered to God, our money, time, dreams, relationships, gifts, possessions, everything, if we surrender that to God, that's because he is our God. He is our God. And for that reason, we need to give everything over completely. And I'd like to say that in looking at this series, often you're preaching to yourself more than to everybody else. I'd like to say that often that I do this well, but to be honest, there are times that I don't do it really well. And I have to keep coming back and saying sorry and handing things back to God again. So here's a question that I want us to consider just for a couple of moments. What does a fellowship look like that is sold out for God? Not just individuals. What does a fellowship look like? And is our fellowship living a life together that is sold out for Christ? Let me read from Acts 2. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favour of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily who were being saved. That to me obviously sounds like a fellowship, a group of people who are completely sold out to God in every way, shape and form, in their possessions, their time, their gifts, and also are spirit-led. So coming from that verses and things like that, what does it mean to be a fellowship that is surrendered to God? Well, firstly, it's a fellowship that is completely surrendered to God, is one that is unified. It's one body. There will be a strong sense of community in this fellowship, where everyone knows that they are part of the family and they are valued for. In John 17, when we looked at those passages in John, Jesus prayed that our unity will mirror how he and God are one. He says, "My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who believe in me and through their message, and that all of them may be one. Father, just as you and I in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I've given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me." How do we do that? How do we stay unified? How do we stay as one so that when the world looks at us, they see Christ? Well, firstly, we always seek to build each other up and not tear down. We must continue to strive and speak words that are true, loving and clear. In Ephesians 4, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. And that includes how we speak to each other on social media. I'm really proud of our fellowship and how they interact with each other on social media and Facebook and things like that. I see so much hateful rhetoric by people who are supposedly talking out of love, but really it's just a hateful bashing on the head of people, and it turns me off. Yeah, it's not good. And we're above that. As a fellowship, we need to model healthy relationships, and we need to do that from the top down. So for our leadership, we work very hard at having a healthy relationship with each other, that we are accountable to each other, but we also we spend time together that is just bonding and being with each other. If we can't model that, then the rest of the fellowship is going to struggle, because people will see. They see. It sometimes means that we need to be walking hand in hand, even when we don't see eye to eye. And that can be hard. How we relate and interact with each other will define how healthy our relationships are with each other. In James, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. If a church is to be sold out for God, then it needs to be bringing healing to the broken, hope to the hopeless, gathering the scattered, and meeting the felt needs of the community. We need to connect with people outside of these walls. We need to build relationships with people outside of these walls. We are here because God has called and brought us together to this place to worship his name and make his name known. But what are we meant to be doing? Look in the back wall. Jesus Christ, to know him and make him known. It's almost like in these days, in certain sections of the media, they delight in seeing the decline of the church. They delight in the secularisation of this nation, and anything that they can do, they will do to highlight what they see as something that can pull us down. You only have to look at the ABC in the last week, how they've been running the story and pushing the story that the highest percentage of husbands who beat their wives are supposedly evangelical men who occasionally go to church. Where in fact, where they got those sources from, it's the opposite. And so we have guys now who are stepping up and saying, look, I'm agnostic. I don't believe in this, but guys who go to church have the healthiest relationships out. It's guys who don't go to church. It's guys who don't have any input in that way. It's Indigenous groups of people that have the highest rate of domestic violence. Why is it that it's an agnostic guy standing up? Where are we? Mark McCrindle and Vision Radio and a few other guys commissioned a study that was conducted at the beginning of the year to try and flesh out the state of the church and what it was like really in Australia. Because looking at the census figures, it looked like the church was really struggling. So I've got a couple of graphs here that I'm going to show you. Now, I will have to explain a few things because you need a magnifying glass to read the writing of those and as it goes. Whoops. So this is coming from the census which happened last year. So from 2016. So the dark blue on the bottom, and this is from 1901 to 2016, is the Anglican Church. And the Anglican Church is obviously struggling and have lost a lot of its size and impact. The next one up with the red stripes is the Catholic Church. And so if you look at the figures throughout the last 120 years or so, it's only gone up and down by a couple of percent. It's kept fairly that way. The next one up is they class as other Christian. So they don't identify with the major religions, but they call them, they may not go to church, but they see as some sort of faith. The yellow, which is increasing towards the end, okay, that's other religions like AOG, Church of Christ, Baptist. So there are growth in those areas. But the green stripes above are those who say we have no religion. We don't believe anything. And obviously that is growing substantially. And the ones at the top don't know what they think. So this is from the census. But so McCrindle wanted to look at and ask better questions. So this is what they found from a fairly intensive study. The figures are actually pretty close, where you've got a decline in faith. And I do actually have the studies and can show you guys at a later time and let you have a good look at it. But if you look at that, there's only 7% of people who say they're active, practicing Christians, who go to church regularly, are involved with some sort of fellowship. And there's another 15% who might go once a month. So the numbers are quite small in that area. How much do Australians know about church generally? Not a great deal. That is how they see things now. So 18% know nothing at all, and this is over all demographics in all states. 60% know very little, and only 22% know a great deal, which actually ties in, if you think about it, the percentage of people who actually go to church. That would be it. How well do Australians know the church locally? So these are questions where they ask, do you know your local church? 56% said not at all, 26% only moderately, and 18% extremely well, which is, once again, you'd tie that to the figures of people who actually go to the church. And how much impact does a church have in your area? 9% said it's a negative impact. 47% said they don't know, it's either positive or negative, they have no clue, and 44% say it's a positive. That's not good for the local church. They're obviously not connecting. But the top 10 perceptions of Christians. So this is a question that they ask people, if you know a Christian, what sort of people are they? And 41%, the number one was caring, loving, kind, honest, faithful. So actually people who have a belief, who go to church and have a faith, it is a positive, at least this is the type of person that they are. But the one that I thought was really, really interesting. So the top 5 things that for generations to think about spiritual, religious or metaphysical things. In other words, what prompts people to talk about Christ? What prompts people to talk about Jesus? Conversations with people is number 1 in just about every person. And even in the baby boomers where it's not number 1.
They're all watching the news.
Yeah, they are, but it's still 26 to 24%. It's not a great deal of difference. Conversations with people.
Can we get that?
Yeah. I've got everything. I've got the full report and stuff like that, so I'm happy to share it with. And if you notice Generation Z, which is anyone up to say 23 years old, the number 2 is social media. And that's why it's so important. And I do keep reiterating how we speak on social media and how we connect with people on social media is so important. If we're to be a church sold out for God, number 1 is conversations with people, with them. The top attraction, what draws people to a faith, the number 1 is seeing people who live out a genuine faith, witnessing that. The very bottom one, hearing from public figures and celebrities who are examples of that faith, that is the biggest turn-off. And I just thought of Justin Bieber straight away. I don't know why, it just came to me.
This week there's a big thing going on Facebook about Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
He speaks this phenomenal sermon.
But people think
They don't like it.
It's fake.
Wow.
So that's interesting. These are just questions that they've asked people. So I think it's pretty obvious that the most effective way to become a fellowship that makes a difference to our community, is to be a relational church that's willing to connect with people wherever they are and whoever they are. And this is something that we as a fellowship, we need to be intentional about. When Jesus called the disciples to journey with him, he didn't say, come follow me and let's see what happens. In his final instructions to the disciples and to everyone just before he went to heaven wasn't, good luck, I hope it all works out. Jesus was direct, wasn't he? Come and I will make you fishers of men. Go and make disciples to all nations. That is our cause. That is what we are meant to be doing. To know him and make him known. And we can't do that if our only focus is on Jesus, with Jesus on Sunday mornings. You can't be totally surrendered and have God as number 1 if you are unwilling to walk beside those who are hurting, broken, and think differently to us. So my desire is to be a part of a fellowship that is driven by a desire to go beyond what is comfortable. And we spoke about that a few weeks ago. Dave preached about that. Living uncomfortably for God, being sold out, reaching out and being relational. Our church, I don't want to get caught up by being an attractional church where it's all about the events, it's all about what we do on Sunday mornings. We need to continually making sure that we are a missional church. We are the church outside of these 4 walls. But for that to happen, we need to make sure that our fellowship, when we connect with people, that it's a safe place. That's a place where people can heal. And it might mean that people we connect with don't come to our Sunday services. That's okay. There are people who are having conversations. Because remember, that's the number 1 connector. There are people who are having conversations with guys over a game of chess every couple of weeks. There are people here in this fellowship who have conversations while serving meals to those who are struggling in life. There are people here who are having conversation around a sewing machine. What sort of conversations are we having? Do you know that I see our home groups as one of our most important ministry groups that we have in our fellowship? And this is where you really get and have the ability to be relational. I shared with our ministry team leaders, who are also home group leaders, that these groups are like the roots of a tree, the underground church. When the roots flourish and grow deeper, the tree grows and is able to withstand all that the weather conditions it meets. And so when home groups flourish and grow deeper in their relationships, not just with each other, but more importantly with God, then the fellowship is strengthened and will stand anything that Satan tries to do to us. My desire is that in our home groups, this is where we find people who care about each other, accepting accountability and responsibility to and for one another, exercising the gifts of the Holy Spirit. This is where pastoral care happens at the ground level. So we have people in our home groups, in our KYB groups, who don't come to our Sunday services and don't come to our fellowship, but they are being there. It's a safe place for them to be, to heal and to deal with stuff. And that's good. Being relational, connecting with people is not easy. And I know this, especially from a personal experience. I'm not an out there type of person. I really don't like being the centre of attention, which is why I tried to hide my birthday for so long. There are others who God has gifted with an amazing gift that they can develop real connections with people from all walks of life, and they do it so naturally. You know, people like Karen and Megan, Rhonda, Andrew, and there's so many others. But for some, it's a bit harder. For some, it's a lot harder. And I know that and I accept that. But it doesn't mean that we back off and leave it just to the people who can do it. We all are called to make fishers of men. We are all called to go and make disciples. We are all called to have conversations with people outside of these four walls. Being relational means despite our anxieties, despite our fears, we fully submit to what God wants and be willing to be Spirit-led in this area. It means that we have to have the courage to accept that we are imperfect and won't get it right all the time, but we'll still try. It's being authentic to who we are. No masks. We are who we are. But it's also being authentic in how we connect and the reasons why. It's willing to be vulnerable to those we have conversations with. It's letting ourselves be seen and not hide in the corner. It's taking the emphasis from me and what I struggle with and what I fear and what I want to now looking outwards. It's developing real compassion and real empathy for those we have conversations with. Real compassion asks us to go where it hurts, to enter into places of pain, to share in brokenness, fear, confusion and anguish. Compassion challenges us to cry out with those in misery, to mourn with those who are lonely, and to weep with those in tears. Is that our fellowship? Is that what we're willing to do? For the last few months, we have all been challenged to be completely surrendered to God. Our money, time, dreams, relationships, possessions, gifts, being Spirit-led, everything. And our challenge has been to live a life completely sold out for God. Completely. So today, I want to give everyone the opportunity to respond to this challenge. We've heard these sermons, we've been looking at it, and now's the time to respond. You might have something that you've been holding on to that needs surrendering. Maybe you're struggling with being vulnerable and authentic, instead hiding behind walls so thick that nobody can penetrate. You need to surrender that to God as well. Maybe you feel that you've had this passion once, but now I've got so caught up in life and busy and things that you've lost that first love. That's something also that needs to be surrendered to God. As a fellowship, have we become too focused on being attractional and stop being missional? If so, then as a fellowship, we also need to surrender this to God and turn that around. If the Holy Spirit is tapping you on your heart, saying that this is you today, then I'd like to pray for you. So what I'd like